ITV Sport welcomes you back to daunting Spa-Francorchamps for the Belgian Grand Prix. 190 high-speed miles. It's dry, but the clouds are gathering. Let's join Martin Brundle and Murray Walker. Now then, Murray, do you still reckon your old innkeeper is a decent weather forecaster as well?
Jim, as I left my modest little auberge this morning, I said to the friendly auberge master, "Weather okay today?" "Definitely," he said. "I killed a chicken." But I'm not so sure. You can see the sun shining on the exit of La Source. You can also see at the entry to La Source, there's a big heavy cloud overhead. In not very long, in the last half hour, the track temperature has dropped from 31 degrees to 24 degrees. And as you see the magnificent Ardennes countryside there, you can see that there's cloud over a lot of it. I'm not making any prophecies. I've learned not to do that here. All I will say is that I won't be surprised if it stays dry. But if it does, it'll be the first Belgian Grand Prix meeting for 13 years where there hasn't been rain at some time during the Friday to Sunday period. On the other hand, if it rains, I certainly won't be surprised. Well, we saw what happens when it rains last year with that appalling accident at the start, and about 14 cars very, very badly damaged. 18 of them took the restart, and then we saw Michael Schumacher driving into the back of David Coulthard in an accident which I think lost him the championship last year. And now we have Mika Häkkinen, who has yet to win in Belgium, on pole position for the 10th time this year. Incidentally, when he was having his chat with Martin, I think they were both right. Martin said 19 times in the last 28 races. Mika counts the total number of pole positions he's had, and that's 20 altogether. So there he is alongside his teammate David Coulthard. As you can see, there's just 1/10 of a second between them on race times. But since then, we've had the warm-up this morning. Mika Häkkinen was fastest again, but the quite incredible younger Schumacher, Ralf Schumacher, was second fastest in the Williams Supertech, and he's going absolutely superbly here. He's starting 5th on the grid, and this morning he was only 2/10 of a second slower than Mika Häkkinen. A surprising third fastest this morning was Olivier Panis, and I can tell you that I've seen Olivier Panis disappearing into the Arrows motorhome with boss Tom Walkinshaw, which leads me to believe that Olivier will be driving for the Arrows team next year. Jean Alesi, 4th this morning, was 3rd last year in those appalling weather conditions. And then the 4 British drivers were 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th fastest this morning. Damon Hill, Eddie Irvine, David Coulthard and Johnny Herbert. But you heard what Ron Dennis said to Martin. He's not fearing the Ferraris so much as the 2 Jordans, with Heinz-Harald Frentzen 3rd on the grid, a second slower yesterday, but because of those accidents that Jacques Villeneuve and Ricardo Zonta had, he effectively lost 2 of his sessions on the track. So it's a bit misleading. There he is, incidentally. And Damon Hill, 3 times a winner here in Belgium. The man who won Jordan's first Grand Prix for them at this magnificent track last year is 4th on the grid, ahead of Ralf Schumacher and Eddie Irvine. So they're about to clear the grid and start the formation lap. You've come up directly from the grid, Martin. Any changes to your feelings since then?
No, it's just amazing to be out there in T-shirt weather. I think the last time, as you said, many years ago, I remember, I think it was 85, we actually cancelled the race here. It was so hot, the tarmac came up, and we all had to go home and came back later in the year to make the race, but I'm sure it probably rained anyway. But no, I think everybody down there is somewhat relieved to at least be starting the race in dry conditions. And I was surprised when I got down there to see pole position on the right-hand side. Although it's a right-hander, I think it's pretty much offline there. So Häkkinen's got that stagger on the grid there, look, that gives him a head start. And but basically, I don't think he's got too much advantage. And you tend to get a bit of a concertina effect as the first car breaks into turn 1, and they all back up behind. So I think, as Ron Dennis pointed out, everybody tends to try to be super cautious, but a lot of people out there need to score some points today.
Can I just jump in very quickly and say we've already had some drama. The pit lane closes at 15 minutes to the hour, and you're not allowed to go on the track after that. You have to start the race from the pit lane if you aren't already on the track. And just before it closed, Alex Zanardi switched to the spare Williams, which had been set up for Ralf Schumacher, and Tora Takagi switched to the spare Arrows.
As you were momentarily on board there with Frentzen, it's quite a long climb up to Les Combes. You come out of Radion at 175 miles an hour, and you're doing just over 200, despite this very long straight. The engine's working very much overtime up there, and it's a surprising climb. You can't really see it even sitting in the car. You can certainly feel it as the engine labours, and then that means you can brake extra late into this corner, Les Combes. We're on board now with Alesi. Because you're braking slightly into the hill, then you need to be very neat and tidy through here. We've all had some pretty big accidents coming out of this fairly ordinary looking corner, because if you get out of shape in the middle, you're really going much too fast to ever make the exit of the corner. And Schumacher had a big crash there. Many people been off, and that's the double left down the hill that wrenches your neck off of your shoulders, and then into, I think it's Fagnes, is it, the chicane? And then this is the new part of the circuit. You're still pretty much heading downhill all of the way before you rejoin. We're back on board with Frentzen, tricky little right-hander before you get to Stavolo. They'll be taking that flat out in qualifying, but in the race giving a margin of caution. Very easy to come out of there backwards and slam into the barrier. And this is the older part of this is a main road. The rest of the year round, this is a normal main road for people moving around this area.
Well, this is the Blanchimont corner. It's one of the really daunting ones on the circuit. They take it at about 185 miles an hour, believe it or not. Now, we've got two super starters up front. Mika Häkkinen starting from his 10th pole position this season. David Coulthard very quick. No team orders between them that I'm aware of. And Heinz-Harald Frentzen that we're riding with is going to have a very tough job to try and get past them.
Can you hear him squirting the throttle? And then look, watch his head jolt forward. He's left foot braking, so he's accelerating with the right foot, obviously, and left foot braking, then pressing the brakes very hard, desperately trying to keep some kind of temperature in those carbon brake discs as they crawl through the entry to the bus stop. Damon Hill there, fourth on the grid. I think he did a superb job yesterday. A track that needs total and utter commitment. He was one of the fastest through Eau Rouge, if not the very fastest. And for a man who's acknowledged that he's moving into his last 5 races of his career, I think that is a great performance.
Yeah, Damon's lost none of his will to win. So there is Pedro Diniz in the Sauber and coming up to the grid. On your left is Mika Häkkinen, on your right is David Coulthard. Behind Häkkinen is Frentzen, behind Coulthard is Damon Hill.
I think Coulthard using a hand clutch today. Normally uses a foot clutch, but he's got a clutch behind the steering wheel. And Coulthard, I think, also feeling pretty croaky, so he'll be somewhat relieved if he can get that car away nicely and into the first corner, even if it's just behind Häkkinen. I think the McLaren should have the pace, Murray, to gently move into the distance with the two Jordans and Ralf Schumacher giving a good chase. Irvine's got a big job on his hands this afternoon.
Quite a long hold for Häkkinen and Coulthard. But it's go. Good one for David Coulthard, who edges up alongside Mika Häkkinen, who is on the inside. And Damon Hill has already been passed by Schumacher. And coming up on the outside is Eddie Irvine. A bad start for Damon Hill, then a good one for Heinz-Harald Frentzen. That's Tora Takagi, and Häkkinen leads. Coulthard second.
Coulthard leading, I think you'll find, Murray. I think it's Coulthard, then Häkkinen. 2 cars stalled on the line, but it's a 1 minute 47-second lap, so plenty of time to clear those stranded cars.
And Zolta and Takagi both stalled on the line. Dante in the BAR, Takagi in the Arrows, and yes, indeed, David Coulthard leads in Belgium up to Les Combes, and that is the Arrows of De La Rosa at the back.
Yes, Damon Hill having a terrible first lap. I think Zanardi's passed him as well, so a bad first lap for Damon Hill. Frentzen third. Irvine's had a good start.
Yeah, excellent for Eddie Irvine. That's what he needs. Now, you remember James Allen thought that Eddie Irvine might be starting on a low fuel load to have a lighter car to enable him to sprint up from 6th position on the grid and make some places. Well, thanks to that good start, he has already got ahead of Ralph Schumacher in the Williams, and Eddie Irvine is in 4th place, closing up on Heinz Harald Frentzen. McLaren leads, McLaren second. There's Takagi and Zonta in their cars, still on the grid.
Yes, Takagi's right outside our window. We're looking down into the cockpit. He's waving his arm, saying, I can't get any drive. They pushed him away, he stalled the engine again, and that's preventing them from getting Zonta's BAR, which is stuck in gear by the looks of it. I'm looking down on top of him now out here, and Zonta now gets away.
Now, Alex Zanardi has got past, as you heard from Martin, he's got past Damon Hill, and he's up behind his teammate, Ralph Schumacher. Oh, look how close it is as they come through to complete the lap, as they exit the bus stop. Coulthard leads, Hakkinen second, Frentzen in 3rd position. They're getting spread out at the back, of course, but everybody except Takagi and Zonta completes the first lap, and Zanardi is going better than he's been in any Grand Prix this year. Good for Williams.
Yes, Coulthard will be using that hand clutch again, I think. A perfect start as
fighting for position. Panis fighting his way through.
Yes, that was a good move, brave move up the inside there, and good stuff, good fighting stuff. But Coulthard running away, 1.4 seconds in the lead at the end of lap 1.
Yeah, David Coulthard's been mighty impressive in qualifying and practice. But watch Eddie Irvine, if he's on that light fuel load, he's got to get up with Frentzen. He's with him now, and tight up behind him is Rubens Barrichello and Johnny Herbert. They're making excellent progress as we go round with Olivier Panis sprinting up through the field. Now, I told you he was 3rd fastest this morning. He only started 17th on the grid. So Olivier, in one of his final races for the Prost team, is on it. David Coulthard, Mika Hakkinen, Heinz Harald Frentzen, Eddie Irvine.
A message on the computer, Murray. Incident involving car 1 under investigation by stewards.
Car 1 is Mika Hakkinen.
Of course. I wonder if he jumped the start.
Well, if he has jumped the start, that's going to mean a 10-second penalty, and it's going to mean the time that it takes to get into the pit and slow down and get up to speed afterwards. That could be very bad indeed for Mika Hakkinen, but I don't know that that is the situation. All I know is that at the present moment, he's tight up behind. There he is in the background. Mika Hakkinen second, Heinz Harald Frentzen third, Eddie Irvine and Ralph Schumacher closing up on the Ferrari as Ricardo Zonta comes through last, and he's already about to be lapped by David Coulthard, who's coming through to complete his 2nd lap in the lead. Now, he led by 1.4 seconds at the end of the first lap. He goes through and completes his 2nd lap now. Mika Hakkinen still up behind him. We're watching out to see whether anything is going to happen to Mika Hakkinen when the stewards have reported. But meantime, Coulthard is increasing his lead. He's increased his lead by 0.6 of a second over his teammate with the fastest lap of the race so far.
Yes, either Hakkinen's just not comfortable in the car at this stage of the race, or he's got a heavier fuel load. Maybe he's one stopping to Coulthard's 2, because Coulthard a full 0.8 of a second faster.
And Damon Hill down in 7th position, having started from 4th. He's been passed by Zanardi. He's been passed by Ralph Schumacher. He's been passed by Eddie Irvine. Damon Hill is fighting, but there's a long way to go. It's a 44-lap race, 190 miles, and we're going to have, I think, probably the McLarens will be stopping once. They had a second advantage in qualifying, and if that's translated into race terms, it gives them a tremendous advantage.
I think the tyre wear is too high for a one-stopper. I would imagine they'll go for 2, but we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, it's only 44 laps here for the Grand Prix, but it's a very long lap as Coulthard comes up to lap Zonta already because of Zonta's starting problems, as you know, and Coulthard will hope he can get past Zonta. There's a longish straight coming up before he gets to Blanchimont, otherwise that could easily cost him a second.
As David Coulthard, leading the race, comes up behind Ricardo Zonta.
Watch this start again. Damon Hill very poorly away, look, the second of the yellow cars, and Coulthard squeezing Hakkinen up against the wall. Hakkinen has another nibble up the inside and nerfs into the side of David. That's the incident they're probably going to be talking about. I wonder if that damaged the suspension at all of Hakkinen's car as they all trip over themselves behind, but no contact, fortunately. Brilliant driving by everybody into turn 1, and the 2 McLarens actually touched.
And I can tell you that Zonta has been given a waved blue flag That means move over and let David Coulthard through when he's done so. There is the race leader, David Coulthard, in the McLaren on his 4th lap now, and he's 2.5 seconds nearly ahead of Mika Häkkinen, really flying. Now, we don't know whether anything happened to Mika Häkkinen's McLaren when, as we think, they made contact going round La Source after the start, but whatever, David is really on it at the present moment. David Coulthard leading in Belgium, having won the British Grand Prix, and Tora Takagi looks like the first retirement of the Belgian Grand Prix.
Yes, I can't see really, if Häkkinen didn't jump to start, I don't really see that he did anything particularly bad into turn 1. It was fair enough. He tried to wiggle his way back up the inside and regain the advantage on Coulthard. But it was a minor touch. I don't really see what the stewards can do about that move from Mika Häkkinen. Coulthard was squeezing him up against the wall. That's fair enough too, and it's all business as usual at the front end of the Grand Prix.
It certainly is. McLaren first, McLaren second, and although Coulthard is still that 2.5 seconds or so in front of Mika Häkkinen, he's 4.5 seconds in front of Heinz-Harald Frentzen. So the McLarens are already starting to run away with the race, with Eddie Irvine in 4th position. He's nearly 3 seconds behind Frentzen. So it's very much McLaren, Jordan, Ferrari. Ralf Schumacher is in 5th position. His teammate, Alex Zanardi, is in the points, as far as I can remember, for the first time this season. Doesn't mean to say he's going to finish there, because he's had an awful lot of unreliability, but enormously heartening for the very likeable Italian that he's going so well here. Ahead of Damon Hill, Mika Salo, who started 9th in the Ferrari, is in 8th position. Rubens Barrichello and Johnny Herbert in the 2 Stewart Ford cars are 9th and 10th.
So Irvine really falling back. He's some 2.4 seconds a lap slower than the current race leader David Coulthard, suggesting that Ferrari could be chock-a-block full of fuel again. So Häkkinen bouncing his way over the top of Raidillon on the exit of Eau Rouge, and he can see Coulthard down the road.
And I think Mika Salo is starting to hold up a caravan of cars behind him. Rubens Barrichello, Johnny Herbert, Fisichella, they've all done their fastest laps of the race in 9th, 10th and 11th places, and are closing right up on Mika Salo in 8th position in the Ferrari. That is Mika Häkkinen, car number 1 that stewards are looking into.
Yes, Häkkinen has just done a stunning first section time, so clearly not too much awry on his front suspension with that little nerf with Coulthard. And he's taken a full 0.4 of a second out of Coulthard just on the way up to the top of the hill in the first half minute of this lap. So, and Häkkinen, we know, is super quick through the midsection of this Spa circuit.
And look at this, Eddie Irvine in the Ferrari with Ralf Schumacher in the Super Tech-powered Williams swarming all over him, and Alex Zanardi well up there. But I'm looking to see where Jacques Villeneuve is at the present moment. The Canadian driver who had that colossal prang yesterday, 15th in the race. His teammate, Ricardo Zonta, in the rebuilt BAR after his big crash yesterday, is 21st. And this is the exit from Stavelot up towards Blanchimont. And that is Ralf Schumacher. He's 5th. Now, here's a replay at the start. We're with Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who started 3rd on the grid. Now you can see Mika Häkkinen on the right. On the left is David Coulthard moving ahead of his teammate as they turn in for La Source.
Well, definite contact there, no question about that. The 2 McLarens, and Häkkinen very, very nearly losing a place to Frentzen, who we're on board with. Coulthard getting a good clean run around the outside after that, and they fall back into line. So a bit nip and tuck for the 2 McLarens. That's the second time this year we've seen that happen, but the other way around last time in Austria.
And if Eddie Irvine there is on a light fuel load, it's certainly not doing him any good, because he is not closing up on Heinz-Harald Frentzen in front of him. Indeed, the gap is 4.8 seconds. There is Schumacher 5th. Zanardi has got Damon Hill behind him, and Salo, and Rubens Barrichello. And that is Zonta, who's been lapped. There is Johnny Herbert. Behind, there are the 2 Benettons. And streaming through, Jacques Villeneuve there is in 16th place as we rejoin Mika Salo going round the right-hander at Rivars. That's a second gear, 65 mile an hour corner. and the McLaren mechanics in the garage seemed to be quite relaxed. So whatever it is, the stewards were not allegedly, they were investigating something. Doesn't seem to be causing a problem with McLaren.
I think it's 20 minutes they've got to serve some kind of notice. So the day is yet young for punishing Häkkinen, but as I said before, I can't see anything to punish him for.
No, neither can I. It is 20 minutes, because we remember from the British Grand Prix last year when we had that astounding situation with Michael Schumacher winning the race while he was stationary in the pit lane. Anyway, here is Coulthard coming through to complete his 6th lap. Now, he was 3 seconds ahead of Mika Häkkinen. Let's see how far he is now. He completes the lap. Doesn't look like 3 seconds to me, but it's more. It's 3.4 seconds.
Yes, Coulthard, a new fastest lap, a 1:54.7, so he's absolutely flying. Whatever the track conditions, it's certainly suiting the setup of that McLaren of Coulthard's as he's edging ever ahead of Mika Häkkinen.
And although it's early to start talking about the Constructors' Championship, I'm going to do so because potentially McLaren have got 16 World Championship points coming their way if things stay the way they are. They are currently 4 points behind Ferrari. There is the Ferrari of Eddie Irvine in 4th position, and he's on a potential 3 World Championship points. So things have got to change very dramatically for Ferrari to be happy with this race. They don't need to change much at all, in fact, for McLaren to be delighted with it. And really, to be fair to McLaren and to Ferrari, those races that Eddie Irvine won in Austria and Germany were not so much victories for Ferrari as losses for McLaren.
That's the first time for a long time we've seen Coulthard with the upper hand over Häkkinen. Häkkinen certainly has just had this tremendous run, building confidence, been knocking Coulthard back, somehow just edging...
Diniz, this is?
Yeah, Diniz, well out of shape before he arrives at the bus stop. Must have locked a wheel in the early part of the braking zone, but... Coulthard's had to suffer. Häkkinen responding by a 10th or 2 to anything he's been able to do all through the season. And this is the first time we've really seen Coulthard having the edge over Mika Häkkinen this year.
Yeah, Mika doesn't always, in his terms, go all that well at this circuit. Last year, of course, he had that collision with Michael Schumacher. 1 year he had a problem coming up to the start, which took him out. It's by no means his best circuit, which is surprising in a way, because I would have thought it would suit him, this flowing series of bends and tremendously fast straights. He's very, very committed. But we're now on lap 8. We're going for a break. as we watch Zanardi, Hill and Salo in respectively 6th, 7th and 8th places. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for Alex Zanardi, who's had 8 failures to finish this year, a double American champion, that he'll at least stay where he is, if not better, to get his first World Championship point since 1993 when he drove for Lotus.
Yes, welcome back to Formula One, Alex Zanardi. This is the first time we've really seen him in Formula One this year. He's been around, of course, but he's been having a terrible time reliability-wise or falling off the road. And this is the first time I remember almost in any session this year, certainly any race, where Zanardi has been with the pace and going very well too.
All right, we're supposed to be able to see some passing here, Martin. Is that an illusion, or is Belgium just like everywhere else? And if you get tight up behind the car in front, the aerodynamics get disturbed and you can't get by?
Well, traditionally, when you have high-speed corners, it becomes even more difficult in the dirty air, so it's not a great place for overtaking, although there are opportunities into the bus stop and into La Source, but plenty of opportunity for tears as well. I think possibly the best chance if you can get a good run through Eau Rouge and slipstream them up that long haul of a hill and dive up the inside where there's plenty of grip into Les Combes, but nobody seems to be able to follow closely enough through Eau Rouge at this stage, so it's pretty much follow the leader, isn't it?
Yep, so as you watch the last man in the points, Zanardi, here is the first man in the points, David Coulthard, and he is leading the race as we get news from James Allen in the pits.
Well, Murray, we talked about this Irvine situation, the possibility he might go with a low fuel load at the start to try and make some positions. I think he's done it without going with a light fuel load. I think he's on the same sort of fuel load as Frentzen in front of him. In fact, I think they're all fairly much matched for pace. Coulthard is obviously faster. We've seen all weekend that the McLaren has about a second in hand, and he's been told to go out there and push like mad, open a big gap before the first stops around about 17 to 20. The one who's interesting is Häkkinen. He wouldn't be lapping 2 seconds off Coulthard's pace unless he had some kind of difficulty. He's the one that doesn't make sense to me, but the rest, I think, are all on more or less the same strategy. We could see some overtaking in the pit lane first time around.
Well, in the meantime, if Mika Häkkinen has got a problem, and I'm certainly not saying he hasn't, it's certainly not affecting his speed relative to Heinz-Harald Frentzen behind him. Because Häkkinen's last lap was a second faster than Frentzen's, and the Finn, Mika Häkkinen, is now 6.5 seconds ahead of the German Heinz-Harald Frentzen. You're not hypothesising, James, are you, that David Coulthard's on a one-stopper?
Murray, I don't think there's any chance he's on a one-stopper, not the pace he's going at the moment. It's the tyre wear's too high. Back to you.
Thank you.
That's Panis coming up the inside of Wurtz. That's the braking zone into La Source we were talking about a while ago, but sadly that's for 14th and 15th places they're squabbling.
And only one retirement on lap 10 out of 44 in Belgium. Tora Takagi, who, as I said earlier, had to start in the spare car. He had problems with that and was out of the race almost immediately. Ricardo Zonta is still running. He's been lapped already. He's in 21st position, and the top 10 on lap 11, that is 1/4 distance. David Coulthard leads Häkkinen by 6.4 seconds. He's 14 seconds ahead of Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Irvine is in 4th place. Ralf Schumacher is 5th. Zanardi is 6th. You're looking at Zanardi with Damon Hill 7th and Mika Salo 8th behind him. They are about 3 seconds ahead of Rubens Barrichello in the white Stewart, coming down to La Source in 9th position. Jean Alesi is storming up through the field because Alesi, who started 16th, is now in 10th position, right on the tail of Rubens Barrichello. Alesi may be disenchanted with Sauber, but it's certainly not showing here.
Yes, and this is the second consecutive race that the Stewart Ford's been off the pace. They've definitely slipped back a bit recently. Barrichello 9th, Herbert 11th. And remember, they were very much chasing, and Barrichello led 45 laps of the French Grand Prix, and they've definitely slipped back relative to Williams and certainly Jordan.
And he had, of course, that magnificent drive in Brazil. Puff of smoke there from Damon Hill's Jordan. I didn't see whether it was tyres, but it must have been as he braked for the right-hander there at Rivage. So, Zanardi, Williams, Damon Hill, the winner 3 times here in Belgium, including last year in the Jordan. But whilst the race is pretty static at the moment and Salo can't catch Damon Hill in front of him, a lot is going to depend on strategy. When they come in to take on more fuel and change tyres, If they're on a one-stop strategy, I'm expecting them to start at round about half distance, which is 22 laps. If they're on a two-stop strategy, it could be as early as lap 14, and we're on lap 12 at the present moment. But either way, it's not going to be very long before people start coming in. And because the tyres start to degrade, I don't mean to say they fall apart, I mean that the performance falls off after about 15 laps here, and it falls off at the rate of 1.5 seconds a lap, believe it or not, which is compensated to some extent by the fuel going down. We can expect two stoppers, and a lot of them.
Do you mean 1.5 tenths per lap, Murray, rather than 1.5 seconds? But yes, Coulthard now back in the 156s, which is already 1.3 seconds down on his fastest lap of the race. So the tyre degradation here they're all on the softer option, but I think the degradation has surprised all of the teams.
Yeah, Bridgestone brought two compounds here, a medium soft and an extra soft, and to their surprise, everybody has opted for the softer tyre. Now, here comes Zanardi, who's creating a bit of a roadblock now. Damon Hill tight up behind him. Sarlo, who's in 8th position in the Ferrari, is behind the yellow Jordan of Damon Hill. And Damon is looking for an opportunity to get past Alex Zanardi, which is being denied him. Incidentally, you see a lot of greeny yellow smoke looking like coming from the back of the cars occasionally, and particularly on the approach to Eau Rouge. It is actually the under tray, the diffuser, bouncing along and scraping on the ground and being ground off, and that's what makes the coloured smoke. So, lap 12, time for a break. No changes on lap 14 at Spa, except for the fact that Olivier Panis has made the first stop on what is clearly and strangely a three-stop strategy. He's now in 17th position in the Prost, but we're going to be waiting for the two stoppers to come in pretty soon as Zanardi, Hill and Sarlo maintain formation in 6th, 7th and 8th places, followed by Rubens Barrichello and the ever-present Jean Alesi. This is lap 14. Any moment now, the two stoppers will be coming in.
Yes, and I think it's been a while yet, Murray, but Coulthard a 55.5 on that last lap, and Hakkinen a 56.0. Coulthard now 7.3 seconds in the lead. and moving away, and it's all in the last section of the lap that he's making it up. But Häkkinen on a slow lap too this time around, so whatever's going on in Häkkinen's car, he cannot match Coulthard's pace.
Now, I thought Eddie Irvine, in fact, at the time I was right, he closed up a bit on Frentzen, but Frentzen's got the message, and into the pits is the Minardi of Luca Badoa from down in 17th position.
Yes, I have no idea what all the smoke was about. There was a lot of smoke even before he lit up the rear tyres there. So Badoa, I think it was a scheduled stop, and clearly he too is on a 3-stopper, which makes no sense whatsoever this afternoon.
Alesi trying, Barrichello resisting, holding on to his 9th position. Very disappointing for Rubens Barrichello, even more disappointing for Johnny Herbert in the second Stewart Ford, who is behind these two in 11th position. Because Stewart, like everybody else, have been working on alterations to their cars. The constructors are carrying on changes to this year's cars very late this season. Normally they're concentrating on next year's car by now, but such is the pace and the competition that everybody's having to keep on trying to improve the performance of their cars right up to the end of the season. So 30 laps remaining. We've got 1/3 distance almost completed as we go up to Les Combes with David Coulthard, race leader.
Yes, interestingly, Irvine is 24.7 seconds behind Coulthard as Alesi comes in for a stop. And I think if Irvine does happen to be one stopping, at the moment he could come into play with Coulthard if Coulthard were to stop, which on a 2-stopper. So Coulthard needs 2 or 3 more seconds in his pocket before making that stop, if he can get it, and make sure that he doesn't come into contact at any time with that Ferrari. Look at all the brake dust flooding out of the uprights as the air guns pound on the wheel nut. Alesi waiting for fuel patiently, had no stalling problems. The reason he stalled in Hungary is the car was clean out of fuel. The tank was dry. That's why it looked like Alesi stalled the car, but actually the tank was empty. And here's somebody locking up big time. Must be Johnny Herbert, isn't it?
Yeah, Johnny Herbert being passed by Alex Wurz, who moves up into 12th position.
Yeah, Johnny needs a good performance at the moment. There's a lot of talk of him being released from the Stewart team, even though he's got a firm contract. So Johnny could do with a slightly more polished performance than he's able to put in this afternoon.
And here's Marc Genet in the other Minardi. So they've both come in fairly early. His teammate Luca Badoa has come in and gone out again. This is David Coulthard, race leader by over 8 seconds on lap 14. He's just coming through to complete that now and go into his 15th lap. But he's getting on for 20 seconds now ahead of Heinz-Harald Frentzen as we look back down the track at Mika Häkkinen. And look, it's clear before Frentzen arrives.
Coulthard 1.1 seconds faster than Häkkinen on that lap. Häkkinen really now doing the same sort of pace as the chasing pack. So what kind of problem Mick has got? If he did affect the geometry of the steering when he ran into Coulthard at the beginning of the race, would certainly give him a lot more tyre wear at the front and some understeer. If we get a shot, it'd be worth trying to see Häkkinen's front tyres, because Coulthard's romping away.
Well, it was 6 minutes past 2 local time when we got the report that the stewards were considering what they called an incident at the start between Coulthard there and Häkkinen. It is now 26 minutes to the hour local time, and so the 20 minutes have been concluded, and presumably the stewards have decided there is nothing to worry about for anybody, especially for David Coulthard there. Out in front as into the pits comes Johnny Herbert, car 17, from 14th position, which he will lose to Pedro Diniz in the Sauber.
So this is 2-stop territory then. 2-stop territory, and Johnny really, I think, the first of that group.
We'll see how long he takes. Should, if I was going to say, about 9 seconds, a bit slower. 10 seconds for Johnny Herbert, who exits the pit lane, followed by Pedro Diniz, who doesn't therefore take his place. He came in at the same time as Johnny Herbert in the Stewart. We're on lap 16 now. David Coulthard looking secure, steady, smooth. Brakes from nearly 200 miles an hour to take the bus stop at about 45 miles an hour on the entrance, and completes the lap Now, is he going to be a full 10 seconds ahead of Mika Häkkinen at the end of this lap? I expect him to be. He's done the fastest lap of the race so far, 1 minute 54.7, compared with Mika Häkkinen's time, Villeneuve's lap record, 1 minute 52.7.
We've got it up to 9.8 seconds, look, Murray, so still edging away by a few tenths, and once again, all in the last section of the race. And this is Coulthard now going across the sawtooth curbs on the way into the lay-by that we call the bus stop, and that's where he's making up the time.
Well, the McLaren design team, led by Adrian Newey, he obviously doesn't design the whole thing himself. He's got a very capable team of people with him, Neil Oakley and others at Woking. It certainly seemed to have ironed out the reliability bugs as into the pits from 9th position comes Damon Hill. He was 4 seconds behind Barrichello. He was 16 seconds ahead of Fisichella, so he should be able to maintain track position with a bit of luck.
Yes, that was a great pit stop, but I think the reason he'd slipped
There goes Fisichella, sorry Martin.
I think the reason he'd slipped a couple of places is it's a very slow pit in here, and you deviate, you don't go into the bus stop at all, you go into the pit lane very, very early here, and I think that stop may just move Damon up the order a little bit.
Lap 17 then. David Coulthard, 10 seconds ahead of Mika Häkkinen, who is 10 seconds ahead of Frentzen, who is 6 seconds ahead of Irvine, who is 3 seconds ahead of Ralf Schumacher, who is 6 seconds ahead of Zanardi. Williams, 5th and 6th. That is good.
I keep drawing my breath. Coulthard's using all of the racetrack and a couple of very bumpy curbs in places, and certainly somewhere near his limit. So I keep sucking cold air through my teeth a couple of times. But there's a little right-hander just before Stavolo where he's really on it.
Coming up to lap, Pedro de la Rosa, who is in 20th position in the Arrows. David, of course, has long since lapped Ricardo Zonta in the BAR. You just saw De La Rosa disappearing out of the bottom of your picture. Down to Eau Rouge, this daunting left-right. It's climbing uphill very steeply here. Frentzen into the pits from 3rd position.
Louise.
Good, and it's Louise.
Yeah, Heinz-Harald Frentzen coming into the pits for his first stop. Started this race from 3rd position. Now, realistically speaking, all he can do today is maintain position. He's never going to catch McLaren under normal circumstances, so he's going to be keeping his eyes on the cars behind him. At the moment, Irvine is 6 seconds behind, so he's keeping that place well. He's having a fairly lonely race because Häkkinen's about 11 seconds ahead, but he's going to be a popular man if he brings his car home in 3rd place at the end.
Yeah, this is making them all feel a little bit sick, Murray. They're all having to pit before the McLaren, so not only is the McLaren romping away into the distance, both of them, but they were clearly carrying more fuel too, and this confirms their worst fears, I'd imagine, at Jordan and Ferrari.
As Mika Salo exits the pit lane, he was 9 seconds behind Alex Zanardi. We'll need to have a look at the pictures before we can give you the latest positions, because fuel stops affect them dramatically. We haven't been able to see everybody going through. We can see David Coulthard now right on the tail of Spaniard Pedro de la Rosa in the Arrows, racing in Formula 1 at Spa for the first time. And he's found it a pretty difficult circuit to learn, I can tell you. Up to the round Blanchimont, this 185-mile-an-hour corner.
Yes, he's pointing out of the cockpit, driving one-handed at 185 miles an hour, pointing out the other side of the cockpit saying, pass me that side. But that didn't work out well for Coulthard at all. That's not where he needed to catch De La Rosa, but he had a 10.2 second lead heading into that lap, and significantly for me, he's 27.5 seconds ahead of Irvine in the Ferrari, which is a full pit stop as Häkkinen comes in for his first stop of the day. James, are you there?
I am indeed, Martin. Of course, the thing I'm looking out for now is to look at that right front suspension as he comes in to see if there's any kind of damage and what kind of checks they do on it, because he did certainly hit Coulthard at the start. Left front suspension, I beg your pardon. And doesn't seem to be any damage, no great checks taking place. Smart move to bring him in before Coulthard. Ferrari ready for Eddie Irvine, and Coulthard will be coming in the next lap by. In comes Irvine now, and what can he do here? Well, watch the fuel load going in, because if it's more than 8 seconds, then obviously that's going to be a long stint. Anything less than 8, it's a short middle stint.
6.9 seconds compared with 7.7 exactly for Häkkinen and Coulthard. Marvellous stops by the McLaren team, absolutely identical times to within 1/10 of a second. Eddie Irvine has gained 0.8 of a second on his pit stop while he was stopped Whether he lost any more time or gained any more time coming in and going out, I don't know. But there is David Coulthard.
Yeah, unfortunate for Coulthard, his slowest lap of the race was passing De La Rosa on the last tour, but he's got enough in hand, providing he has a good, crisp pit stop to not let Häkkinen anywhere near him. So clearly Häkkinen wasn't carrying more fuel at the beginning of the race. He just simply couldn't match the pace of the number 2 McLaren.
Well, I've always said that in my mind David Coulthard is as good a driver as Mika Häkkinen. It hasn't always looked like it this season because Mika Häkkinen time and time again has beaten David Coulthard to pole position.
Now watch Coulthard, he'll go straight ahead here and then he's got to be down to the speed limit by that white line, and now it must seem so slow. Well, it does seem so slow coming down there, 80 kilometers per hour. You can even hear the back markers rushing past you, and it's an eternity on the pit in here. But Coulthard's pit is first. He can have a nice straight run into it. Look, already in line with it, and cruises into his box. The front jack is under. All the 4 wheels appear to be off. It's crucial now that they get this fuel of 97.2, not brilliant, but good enough, and that'll keep Coulthard in the lead of the Belgian Grand Prix.
I've been watching for Mika Häkkinen, and he has not gone through as David Coulthard exits the pit lane at La Source, and Mika Häkkinen streaks past my commentary box, which is at the beginning of the pit lane. So David Coulthard has very much maintained track position.
Second place man at the moment is actually Ralf Schumacher by 0.4 of a second in front of Häkkinen. Ralf, of course, has not yet pitted, and nor has Zanardi in the sister Williams.
But Frentzen, who is 5th, and Irvine is 6th, have stopped. Fisichella, who is 7th, has not. In fact, he's in 8th position now because Damon Hill has just moved up into 7th position as we look down on the Williams of Ralf Schumacher with Mika Häkkinen there.
Yes, Häkkinen's obviously just passed Ralf somewhere on fresher tyres, so Häkkinen getting a run up the hill and up the inside. Well, he's coming from quite a long way back. Look, he's got in the slipstream. Ralph's tried to sort of somehow cover the line. Mika says, I'm having none of that. I need to get after Coulthard. And Ralf having to give way, Mika having the line into the corner, and quite an important move there for Mika. He cannot afford a couple of laps following that Williams on old tyres.
And that's exactly the place where Michael Schumacher in the Benetton and Damon Hill in the Williams so memorably banged wheels at the Belgian Grand Prix before as they fought for the lead of the race. Michael Schumacher won it only to be excluded because of a faulty plank underneath the car, and Damon Hill took the victory. And David Coulthard is on lap 20 out of 44 now. Oh, wham, bang!
Diniz, isn't
Off
it?
goes Pedro Diniz in the Sauber. And there you saw the gravel really did slow the cars down.
I don't know which corner this is at the moment.
I'm trying to work out where
that
it is.
barrier looks the same all the way. It's the top of Eau Rouge, isn't it?
Yeah.
The top of Eau Rouge, yellow flags waving. I don't think they'll have to bring the safety car out for that, but Diniz, the rear end getting away from the front wheel on the curb, and that's exactly where the BARs were going off yesterday.
Carbon copy of Jacques Villeneuve, and a carbon copy, incidentally, of Alex Zanardi in the Lotus years ago when the safety precautions were not nearly as good as they are now, and Zanardi went straight into the wall backwards at enormous velocity.
Yeah, the big difference for Diniz over the big crashes yesterday in qualifying is he would be going slower, plus he spun on the racetrack, so he was able to let the speed decay, and the gravel managed to slow him down. Similar accident to the two BARs, but a completely different result because he was spinning down the track.
Well, now Damon Hill is on a charge. He's about 10 seconds behind Eddie Irvine in 7th position. Damon Hill, that is. Eddie Irvine in the points in 6th place. The only Ferrari in the points because Salo is down in 9th position. Salo disappointed at the last Grand Prix in Hungary and said he felt ashamed of himself that he hadn't been able to do better for Ferrari. Well, he's doing better here, but not well enough, and they are really, really missing Michael Schumacher.
What on earth's going on here? We're 3 abreast here. It looks more like a super speedway race.
And it's a Lacey taking Barrichello, and Wurtz moving through on the inside. So Barrichello lost 2 places there, and Lacey is up into 9th or 10th positions depending on how the pit stops ahead of him have gone. And he's really pushing. Jean Lacey loves this circuit. He's a driver's driver. And in the appalling weather conditions we had last year, he was third. So there is Wurtz ahead of, and that is Pedro Diniz, helmet off, out of the race. But if he got away with coming off the top.
Look at this, look. I think what happened there is that Barrichello got a good slipstream, went past Wurtz, then went in too deep, and Wurtz going back around the outside of Lecombe.
And this is Heitz Harold Frentzen, or was, because now you look at Mika Häkkinen.
Yellow flags waving. That means you've got to slow down a little bit, and you certainly must not overtake as Zanardi comes in for his first stop from 5th position, as you rightly say, Mary. Interesting to see again how much fuel they put in that. I still think that's a 2-stopper that they're on, just a very late first sector of the race, that is. So Zanardi away. Be interesting. That was slower than Damon Hill's pit stop. Can Damon Hill leapfrog Zanardi during these stops?
That was a super stop of Zanardi. You can see that Irvine there has taken track position from him. We're watching Fisichella now, who has come from 9th place, and he will have lost that position to Jean Lacey, who was close up behind him. So Lacey is fairly flying through the field by passing people on the track and passing them as they are in the pits. This is Eddie Irvine. Now, his previous lap time was a good bit slower than race leader David Coulthard, but he's in the points at the present moment, and that's the minimum that he will want to be. He's got to aim to get as many points as possible to keep his own World Championship hopes alive, which are getting slimmer and slimmer, and especially to keep Ferrari's Constructors' Championship hopes alive.
Häkkinen's on a bit of a lap, some 11 seconds down the road from David Coulthard, but he's 0.8 of a second faster in the middle sector of this lap, where he's been fast all weekend, and setting a new faster sector of the race too. So suddenly Häkkinen has decided he's going to try and put some pressure on this man leader, David Coulthard. Irvine a full 4 seconds slower as Häkkinen sets a new fastest lap.
It could be, Martin, the old story that the new set of tyres that he's got on are just better than the ones he had taken off. But whatever, as you rightly say, Mika Häkkinen is on a charge. He's not going to be content with second if he can take first. Ralf Schumacher comes in from 4th position, and both the Williams Supertechs are still in the points. Or they were when Ralf Schumacher came in, but now Eddie Irvine will have moved up a place, and of course Irvine has stopped.
I'm not sure we'll see Ralph in the pits again. I think he may have put enough fuel in there to get to the end.
Yeah, I think you're right. We could be seeing a very dramatic end to this Belgian Grand Prix, but not dramatic as far as the first and second are concerned, it would seem. We're on lap 23 now, which is 1 lap over half distance, with David Coulthard massively ahead of Häkkinen, who is the same amount ahead of Frentzen.
Yeah, but Coulthard's going to be shocked this time around. When he comes over the start-finish line, they're going to hang him a pit board out that tells him he's lost 1 second of his lead in the previous lap. So time to pick the pace up.
Yeah, 1 second, that's about 1/10 of the lead that he had, and he's coming, I'm just trying to work out who he's coming up to lap at the present moment. Can't see the car ahead of him very well. Yes, I can. It's De La Rosa, the Spaniard, down in 19th position.
Yeah, this is the car that David caught in Blanchimont before, if you remember, and passed him into the bus stop, cost him 1.5 seconds. And of course, the reason he's behind De La Rosa again is because he's made a pit stop. So Coulthard once again losing time in exactly the same place to the same car. Meanwhile, Häkkinen another 1.1 seconds faster on this lap so far.
Well, I do take my hat off to De La Rosa for race manners. He may not be the quickest man on the track, but he is getting out of the way and at his own inconvenience when he has to. Mika Häkkinen goes through. The gap comes down from 10.2 seconds to 8.1 seconds as we leave Belgium for a break, but come back. 25, virtually everybody now except Jacques Villeneuve has made their pit stop, and it's David Coulthard leading Mika Häkkinen by a decreased margin of 8 seconds. Frentzen is still third in the Jordan, but he's 23 seconds behind Coulthard. Eddie Irvine in fourth position ahead of Damon Hill, who's in the points. So both the Jordans are in the points, both the McLarens are in the points, and Mika Salo is sixth, so both the Ferraris are in the points.
Yes, so Häkkinen's cleared the traffic then, and no cars between him and Coulthard now. Coulthard would have had the fright of his life last time around to see his lead down to just 8 seconds from 11, 2 laps before, but he's responded. He is now faster than Häkkinen, so Coulthard did have some time still available, but Häkkinen clearly much happier with this car since they've changed the tyres. Maybe it was a tyre pressure thing, maybe a balance thing, but whatever it is, he's much more hooked up now and doing the kind of lap times I was expecting from him right from the beginning.
Yeah, well, currently it doesn't look as though Häkkinen can catch Coulthard. Frentzen certainly isn't going to catch Häkkinen. Irvine in fourth position doesn't seem to be able to do anything about Frentzen. Damon Hill, however, has just lapped quite a lot faster than Eddie Irvine to close the gap between fifth and sixth down to 9 seconds.
Yes, so Häkkinen lost a second on this lap, and even having to go the long way around De La Rosa into the double left down the hill there at Pouhon cost him some time. Your tyres get a little bit dirty and you have to back off on the way in, and you haven't got the ideal line. You're slower on the way out, and Coulthard now back up to 9.3 second lead, as you can see.
Now, we don't know what is under the sleek skin of the McLaren there. We believe there are some very advanced technical features which may have caused some of the reliability problems, but it's certainly working now, and James Allen is in the pits.
Well, Murray, you and Martin were dead right about Ralf Schumacher. He came in on lap 22 and he put 74 kilos of fuel in the car, a textbook one-stopper, and he has the pace and the aggression to pull it off today. Zanardi did the same thing. He's running close behind him on the road, just 4.5 seconds behind Ralf Schumacher. If this works for Williams, and they've never been the masters of strategy over the years, but if this works for them, it should shake out that they will come in 5th and 6th, which is a good result for them. Eddie Irvine's got to try and get past Frentzen, but Williams, not a bad day for them. I think Ralph perhaps would have hoped for slightly better, but he's got to hope for someone to drop out in front of him. The front runners, expecting them back in again sometime around lap 30 to 32.
Yep, they speak well of you at Grove too, James. But you're absolutely right. On a one-stop strategy, Schumacher and Zanardi could be looking very interesting indeed as the race starts to wind down to its conclusion. We're on lap 26 now. David Coulthard coming through to complete it and to start his 27th lap out of 44. He's got the gap back to nearly 10 seconds between himself and Mika Häkkinen. But it's an interesting situation because, as I said, we've got the 3 top constructors with both their cars in the top 6 now. McLaren first and second, Jordan are third and fifth with Damon Hill, and Eddie Irvine is fourth. Mika Salo has pulled his socks up, metaphorically speaking, and has come up from 9th on the grid to 6th in the race, ahead of Ralf Schumacher and Zanardi. But remember that those two have not got to stop again, whereas Mika Salo most certainly have. Once again, the Belgian Grand Prix is going to revolve around strategy.
Well, in the last 12 years, only 3 drivers have won this Grand Prix, the most challenging, or one of the most challenging circuits in the world. One of them, Senna, sadly no longer with us. Schumacher, Michael, sitting at home watching this on TV with a dodgy leg. And Damon Hill is the only other winner, and he, of course, is on the racetrack, currently running in 5th place. Häkkinen's had a couple of podiums, never a winner. Coulthard's best position ever here is 4th. So the men 1 and 2 at the moment have very much got their own private battle, and I wouldn't be too sure that Häkkinen can't catch Coulthard. He seems to now have that 2 or 3 tenths of a second in hand per lap that Coulthard had in the first section.
And I'm certainly not too sure that Damon Hill, who is 5th, won't catch Eddie Irvine. This is Villeneuve coming into the pits for the 2nd time. Louise?
Yeah, this is Villeneuve coming into the pits for the first time, Murray, so I think we can safely assume this is going to be his one and only pit stop. That explains why he lost so many places at the start. The stop obviously take a while, there's a lot of fuel to go into that car, but I don't think there was going to be too much landing from the pit wall anyway if it took time. Remember, these blokes have been up all night, so I think that's the last we're going to see Villeneuve in the pits today.
Yeah, thanks, Louise, for that. I was saying that Damon Hill has closed the gap between himself and Eddie Irvine, who is 4th, from 6 seconds to 4.5 seconds. The Jordans are beautifully balanced, and with Frentzen and Hill at the wheel, they're more than consolidating their third position in the Constructors' Championship to increase the gap between themselves and Williams, but not to do anything very much about Ferrari, let alone McLaren. Ferrari still at this moment leading the Constructors' Championship, although if they stay where they are when the race finishes, McLaren are going to be leading the Constructors' Championship, and Mika Häkkinen is going to have moved ahead of Eddie Irvine in the Drivers' Contest, looking down at La Source.
Yes, interestingly, McLaren say no team orders, of course, with Coulthard out front, and Häkkinen. Coulthard, I think, is 20 points behind Irvine. Häkkinen is just a couple of points behind him, but the McLaren boys say no team orders, so we can assume that Coulthard will be allowed to go on to win if he can maintain the pace.
Yep, as here is Eddie Irvine, fourth position. He's 5 seconds ahead of Damon Hill. I was expecting to see him in the picture as they came, as Irvine came up to Les Combes, but to give you an idea of the comparative paces, Irvine's lapping in about 1 minute 55.5. Coulthard is lapping in 1 minute 54.3, so he's 1.3 seconds faster than the Ferrari. Eddie Irvine and Salo both metaphorically shrugged their shoulders yesterday and said, we are just not fast enough. And I think there have been suggestions in private that Ferrari may be tailing off their development on this car, which I find very surprising if it is true. But whatever, here they are not a match for the McLarens.
Who on earth suggested that, Murray? Who said that? Were you there when they said it?
I was there when I said it.
When you said it, and now when they said it.
I was there when they said it, and as I said, I very much doubt it.
Yeah, me too. I think that's outrageous and silly. I mean, Ferrari desperate to win the World Championship, and they've got to do it at the moment without Michael Schumacher. But it has to be said, in terms of raw pace, although they won a couple of races, in terms of raw pace, since Michael's been at home, the Ferrari's been on a downward slope.
Despite a man like Ross Brawn at the technical helm and Rory Byrne, the designer, both pushing as hard as they possibly can. Into the pits comes Damon Hill, sounding very strange indeed. Is that just rev limiter?
It's just the rev limiter. It's just the rev limiter. We know he was in a short stop.
No, this is a very short stop for Damon Hill. If you remember, he lost a lot of places at the start. The team have actually changed the strategy. They're running a short mid-stint to try and get him out again, make up those places and get past Zanardi. Now, as he goes down the pit lane, you'll be able to tell better than me. Have they done enough?
Thank you, Louise, because there is Johnny Herbert out of the race again, sadly, in the Stewart. This man who has such appalling luck. Let's see what happens. This is a replay, and you can see he gets it right out of shape, spins off the circuit, across the grass and into the very, very long run-off area, and Johnny Herbert retires then again.
That's the Fagnes chicane. The back end got loose on the way in, and this is a different incident altogether. I'm sure of it. So Johnny clearly had some kind of incident. That's at the top of the hill, and then I think later this lap we're going to see him go off again. So whether he had some kind of braking malfunction, I don't know, because he'd actually lost that car effectively way before he ever got to the corner.
And that's his 6th retirement from 12 races, and sadly he's not going to do his chances of staying with Stewart next year very much good, although the fact that he's on a long-term contract and is an enormously capable and experienced driver will certainly help him. Remember that Johnny Herbert has won 2 Grand Prix. He's won the British Grand Prix, he's won the Italian Grand Prix, he's won at Le Mans, British Formula 3 champion. But now David Coulthard, lap 30, this is about 2/3 race distance, is maintaining a lead of just over 9 seconds over Mika Häkkinen, matching him 10th of a second for lap times, and in the process pulling away all the time from Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who must mentally have settled for third. There is no way that Frentzen can do anything but hope for 4 World Championship points for third place. And here is Schumacher, Ralf Schumacher, right up behind Mika Salo, who's in 5th position.
Yes, I don't think that was Salo overtaking Schumacher. I think it was Schumacher having a go down the outside of Mika Salo's Ferrari. So hopefully we'll get a replay of that if the Belgian director allows it, and see exactly what happened. But I think it was a move Ralph was making that didn't quite stick.
As I've said before, the much maligned Supertech engine is doing a fantastic job here in Belgium in the Williams of not only Ralf Schumacher, but Alex Zanardi in the other Williams is still just outside the points. He's in 7th position. So, Ferrari there, Salo leads, Williams there of Ralf Schumacher, 5th and 6th places.
Yes, Salo in 5th place, but he's a minute behind the McLarens. James, what can you tell us?
Martin, this battle is significant because Ralf Schumacher has been lapping. Don't forget he's on a full fuel load. The cars in front of him are on empty fuel loads. He's been lapping at the same pace as the cars in front. At this rate, he's just 19 seconds behind Irvine. Irvine's got to stop again, which means that Ralph could pinch 4th place off Irvine. So Salo has to hold him up. Otherwise, Irvine could lose 4th place, which is bad enough for him anyway. But to lose 4th would be a complete disaster. Watch out for Ralph. He's the man to watch today.
Yeah, well spotted, well spotted, James. Ralf Schumacher, brother of Michael, of course, and he's only 24 years old. He's now in his 3rd year of Grand Prix racing, having got 2 very hard years of experience in the Jordan team, and he's driven the wildness that he had out of himself. He's now very steady, enormously fast, and he's enormously impressed not only Sir Frank Williams, but also Patrick Head, the technical chief of Williams. They're both looking, all 3 of them are looking forward to BMW power next year, which will get better and better as the years roll by. And that is Zanardi. You can see how close it is there, because Zanardi is 7th, so it's Salo 5th. Schumacher 6th, Zanardi close up behind them, reveling in the fact that his Williams is A, reliable, B, quick, and C, handling extremely well. He had some differential problems again in qualifying, but they seem to have been overcome. This is Lecombe, Salo. Now the gap between Salo and Irvine, the 2 Ferraris who are respectively 5th and 4th, is just under 21 seconds. And as you heard James masterly explain, Irvine has got to come in again and lose time, which is going to be about 9 seconds, plus slowing down and speeding up.
Hakkinen in the pit lane, 2nd place man Hakkinen in the pits, so you can assume that means Coulthard in next time around. There we've got it now. The fuel flap is up. Again, a nice straight run into his garage. And at the moment, everything seems to be going well. A wipe of the visor. First gear, it says on the other side of that lollipop. Oh no, some kind of drama there. And he's away, but that cost time. It says 7.1 seconds. I don't think that includes the time that he had to wait. So somebody was just a little unsure of something and stopped that. That's very unusual. Once that
lollipop... there goes Frentzen, I do believe. Sorry to interrupt you, Martin. I just saw a flash of yellow, which would be A, Jordan, and I don't see that it would have been Damon Hill. It may well have been that Heinz-Harald Frentzen has moved up into 2nd position ahead of Mika Hakkinen.
I'd be surprised, to be honest, but I think it might have been a problem with the fuel hose, Murray. It looked like they were just hesitant on getting
the fuel. Well, here is
Frentzen,
and he's got a clear track in front of him. We're riding with 2nd position. Frentzen did indeed get past Mika Hakkinen as a result of the increased length of Mika Hakkinen's stop.
Yes. Frentzen's got to stop again.
Exactly, yeah, I would say it's a bit of a false dawn because Mika Hakkinen is right up behind Heinz-Harald Frentzen if we saw from outside the car, and it's nice to be riding with someone and seeing from a driver's point of view. So why don't you tell us what it's about?
Well, heading down to Pouhon now and looking for a braking mark on the right-hand side, and look to the apex on the left then, and you always tend to run very, very wide, and then the G-force starts building as you diagonal the track to be ready. Underneath that bridge, there's a good braking marker, and you must hug the curb on the right-hand side. A little bump in the middle. You'll tend to run wide in the mid-part, get on the power, bring the back end round, but don't brake too late for this little right-hander. And Coulthard, we know, is in the pits, race leader in the pits, but we're staying on board with Frentzen. Stavolo just a little gentle on the throttle, squeezing hard. And here's Coulthard. Now, hopefully for him, he can have a good, clean run. He stopped exactly on the marks. And if he has no problems with that extra 3 or 4 seconds, I think that, yes, he's got away, no stalling the engine. A great stop for Coulthard. I think that's going to give him another 4 seconds of lead when all of these pit stops have shaken out.
Yeah, it's very gently out of the pit lane. rejoin the track, and in comes Heinz-Harald Frentzen, having temporarily been in second place, which of course he has now lost to Mika Häkkinen. Into the pit lane, fuel flap open, cruising in, slowly, slowly, slowly. The days when they charged into the pit, slammed on the brakes, raced out for safety reasons are over.
Yes,
Now,
I've seen, well, I've done it myself really, before speed limiters, 150 miles an hour you could be doing by the time you left the pit lane. Terrifying for everybody as Irvine leaves in 8 seconds again. Good, but not spectacular.
and not as good as David Coulthard's 6.9, and not as good as Heinz-Harald Frentzen.
And look,
Salo comes up to take his teammate.
Yes, the two Ferraris nearly touching, as you can see. But look, Irvine managed to stay ahead of Ralf Schumacher. We wondered where that would shake out, and Salo, the leading of the two Ferraris there, but just behind them is Ralf. We don't think he's got to stop again. It's paid off for Ferrari.
Yep, but now what's going to happen about Salo and Irvine? The FIA, the governing body of the sport, have issued another reminder about team orders at Grand Prix racing. What it boils down to is that if for team World Championship reasons you want to let one driver go ahead of another, as Eddie Irvine has just done to Mika Salo, that is permissible.
That's the other way around. It's Salo who moved out of the way for Irvine, so Irvine maintains fourth, with Ralf Schumacher now bearing down on Mika Salo.
And Schumacher therefore up into the points ahead of Damon Hill and looking like staying there. But is he going to be able to do anything about Mika Salo? We're on lap 34 now, 44-lap race.
Salo's got to stop again yet, Mary, I would imagine, so it should be a straight fight between Ralf and Eddie for that fourth place.
That's it, and if Ralf Schumacher can finish in the points in the Williams, it'll be a magnificent achievement. Lap 34, time for a break. curve. 15th, chasing Woods is Benetton.
There's Coulthard's lead up to 13.5 seconds. He just took 1.5 seconds out of Hakkinen on that last lap. Hakkinen, I think, in traffic. We haven't seen him on screen for a while. And Villeneuve there all over the back of Wirtz, but back, as you saw for yourself, in 14th and 15th place.
Now, interestingly, Martin, the fact that there is no team orders, as far as we know, in the McLaren team, is definitely going to hurt Mika Hakkinen. If he finishes in second place, he will get 6 points instead of 10, which David Coulthard gets. Eddie Irvine is going to get 3 points. So Mika Hakkinen would only be 1 point ahead of Eddie Irvine in the Drivers' Championship as Zonta goes off.
Yeah, yes, but McLaren say, right, we race 2 cars. For better or worse, we race both our cars. We will not compromise one and leave all of our other chances in just one car. So you have to take the rough with the smooth on that. In that respect, there's still a way to go in the championship. Coulthard is easily able, mathematically, still to win the World Championship, as is Hakkinen, of course. So at this point, Coulthard's driven so far the better race, and there'd be no reason to swap them around. Hakkinen lost another 4/10 on that lap. He's now 13.8 behind.
Yeah, and I'm all for it. Don't anybody misunderstand that. Hats off to Ron Dennis if he allows the 2 drivers there to finish in the positions that they are in now, even if it does adversely affect Mika Häkkinen's World Championship chances. Incidentally, we've seen Luca Badoer in the Minardi go out of the race with a broken front suspension after riding the curbs at the bus stop very unsuccessfully.
I'm reasonably certain in the knowledge that Ron would have said to them, though, do not run into each other on the first lap, of which they've now done twice this season.
Like what you've done before. Yes. So, there's not much danger of that. They're separated by 14 seconds now on lap 36 out of 44. Mika Häkkinen pulls a tear off from his visor, which was getting a bit dirty, leaves himself with clearer vision as he rejoins the old Spa-Francorchamps circuit at Stavelot. The old track used to come in, and oh my goodness, out of the race goes Ricardo Zonta. So that's another retirement for BAR after a quite awful weekend. But happily, Jacques Villeneuve is still in the race. He's the last man not to be lapped at the present moment. He's first man not to be lapped, I'm sorry. He's in 15th position. And he's got another 8 laps to go. So everybody keep your fingers crossed for him, because he's retired in every other race this year. And BAR really deserves some success after this terrible weekend they've had.
Well, we had 17 finishes in Hungary, which was very high, and we've still got 19, well, will then be 18 cars running here at Spa, which traditionally is a bit of an engine breaker too. But Hakkinen, I think, has given up the chase. Now 14.5 seconds down and doesn't appear to be chasing the car at all, does he? Look, swanning around in the middle of the racetrack. Maybe he's going for the reliability card now, because I don't think he's got quite enough pace. The middle section of the race he looked like he had, but now he's beginning to back off. Ron Dennis talking over the radio to one of the drivers, and I wondered, with 8 laps to go, if he said, OK, boys, that's it, the race is off, just hold position.
Yeah, meantime, Heinz-Harald Frentzen in 3rd position in the Jordan has closed up a bit, only half a second, but he's closed up a bit on Mika Häkkinen. And if Mika Häkkinen keeps going at the speed he's going now, and Frentzen does the same thing, the positions are going to remain the same. And Irvine is in 4th position, Ralf Schumacher is in 5th place, Damon Hill is in 6th position. And this is our last break coming up.
away. We're with Frentzen currently in third place, some 36 seconds behind leader David Coulthard, who now has a 15-second lead. So Coulthard, adrenaline's a wonderful thing, isn't it? I sat with Coulthard half an hour before the race, and he looked like he should be tucked up in bed with a hot water bottle and a lemon drink. He looked and sounded terrible, but once that adrenaline gets pumping around your veins, it's amazing what you can do, and he certainly has had the legs on Hakkinen this afternoon.
Indeed he has, and he richly deserves the victory that looks like being his. I'm always very cautious. I'm not going to say it is going to be his. He's on lap 39 out of 44. He's never won in Belgium, of course. His last victory was the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, and here is Heinz-Harald Frentzen, 37 seconds behind Coulthard in third place, but looking good for 4 World Championship points for Jordan, and his teammate Damon Hill looks as though it's going to be another good drive in Belgium. He's in 6th place, and it'll be 5 points for Jordan if he stays there.
Yes, and surely this confirms Jordan as the third-placed constructor of the year, with just 4 races remaining, 2 cars in the points. Ralf Schumacher scoring just 2 points at the moment for Williams. So Eddie Jordan promised that he was going to do that this year, be third, and he certainly looks like he's going to deliver on that promise.
Yes, and if there's a team that this race has been awful for, it is, of course, Ferrari. Eddie Irvine has got 3 people ahead of him. Heinz-Harald Frentzen that you're looking at, Mika Hakkinen, who is second, David Coulthard, who is first and is now on his 40th lap. Mika Salo, there is Irvine.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen Irvine touch the apex once through that corner. He's really fighting the car. But I tell you what this confirms to me, Murray, is that if Irvine's slipping back in the championship, Schumacher will definitely return for Monza, in my view.
Yeah, he's still got to pass the Sid Watkins test that we saw James Allen telling us about earlier on. But I've no doubt that if Michael Schumacher says he's going to take part, he will take part, because he opted deliberately not to come to Belgium, in spite of the fact that he was told that he could. James?
Well, picking up on that, Murray, perhaps the significance of this result today is that Eddie Irvine will need Michael Schumacher's help when he comes back at Monza, because it'll be very difficult for Ferrari to play it any other way. Schu's chances of the championship are definitely going to be gone, because the points are going to Hakkinen today and to Irvine, and with Irvine a point behind Hakkinen, there's no other way for Ferrari to play it. But hats off to the technical guys at McLaren. They had an unstable but very fast car at the beginning of the year, a few collie wobbles, but they've kept on stabilising the car. But on top of that, they've kept on developing it. They brought new rear suspension parts here. They said, we're going to go faster and faster still. Took the fight to Ferrari. Fantastic, courageous effort from McLaren, and you can see the results on the track today.
Eddie Irvine there doing his darndest to catch Heinz-Harald Frentzen, which would make the difference between 4 World Championship points and 3. And if he could get past Frentzen, he would be tying for the lead of the Drivers' Championship with Mika Hakkinen. But he's not going to do it unless something goes wrong with Frentzen, because Irvine is just under 12 seconds behind the Jordan, as we see Wurz, Villeneuve, and coming up behind Villeneuve is David Coulthard to lap the man who in the BAR is in 15th position. And as I said earlier on, looking good for his first finish of 1999. Jacques Villeneuve, that is, lap 41, 3 to go after this one.
But unfortunately for Jacques, although the team have done brilliantly to get 2 cars to start this race, it's last but 1 place he's running in at the moment, down there in 15th. But Coulthard homing in, and to be lapped around here is quite unusual. It's the longest lap of the year, Murray.
Yes, it is indeed. 4.3 miles every lap of Belgium, and if you walk it, I can tell you feel pretty proud of yourself when you get back to the start, because it's not only long, but there's a lot of gradient too. And now David Coulthard there effortlessly laps Jacques Villeneuve, who quite rightly moves over when he sees the McLaren appear in his mirrors, and lets David Coulthard on his 41st lap through. And he's 15, nearly 16 seconds ahead of Mika Hakkinen now, who continues to be caught at the minuscule rate of 1/10 of a second a lap by Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Eddie Irvine is still continuing by an almost equally minuscule proportion to catch Frentzen, but I'm prophesying that they're going to stay exactly where they are in the top 6. because Mika Salo in 7th position will not be able to catch, never mind get past Damon Hill in 6th place.
If you're wondering why it says David on that car and Mika on the other McLaren, it's not because they love him so much they want his name all over the place, or that he's suddenly become the new main sponsor of that team. It's because it's been replaced. The normal cigarette advertising has had to be replaced here for the Belgian Grand Prix, so they've simply put the drivers' names on the car.
Right, well, you know the top 6 at the moment. Let's look at what's happening behind them. Mika Salo in the 2nd Ferrari is just going to be out of the points. Alex Zanardi won't be too unhappy with 8th position. He will equal the best finish that he's had in a Williams, which was at Monaco. Jonah Lacey has come up from, I think it was 16th on the grid, to 9th position where he is now. Very disappointing for Stewart, with Johnny Herbert out of the race. Rubens Barrichello currently in 10th position. Very, very disappointing for Benetton, who had hoped that they got their car going faster, because Fisichella is in 11th place. Alexander Wurz is down in 14th. Prost won't be happy either, because Trulli and Panis are 12th and 13th. BIR won't exactly be over the moon, but if Villeneuve can get home, that'll be something to be pleased about.
I wonder if this is a turning point for Coulthard. You know, since he had to give up those 2 races in Jerez 97 and Melbourne 98, Hakkinen has just stepped up a gear, and Coulthard has just been hanging on to his shirt tails ever since. Fast, but not quite fast enough through that period of time. And as I said on the grid, 19 poles in the last 28 races for Hakkinen. And I wonder if this could be the turning point, because this is, although David won the British Grand Prix, it wasn't a straight fight where he outpaced Hakkinen.
Right, it's going to be 46 points for Coulthard against 60 for Mika Hakkinen if they stay where they are now. And of course, there are still 50 World Championship points to be fought for, so it's 40 World Championship points to be fought for, so it's not inconceivable that the positions could change at the front. It would have to be very unfortunate for Mika Hakkinen there for them to do so, but in Formula One, anything can happen, and as I say, it usually does. We're on lap 42. Looking down at Mika Hakkinen, and this man is getting to be the Senna of this generation, and I can think of no higher praise. Pole position after pole position, and although he's not going to win this race, he's going to be right up next to his teammate.
Well, I think the FIA have finally really slowed these cars down. I'm not sure it's in a particularly productive way, but fastest lap of this race is some 3 seconds slower than the lap record, which is quite a significant amount in a Formula One car. So finally they are going backwards in terms of lap time.
Yes, I suppose if it's going to happen anywhere, you'd probably expect it to happen here. Although David said he was surprised at how little in qualifying the 4-groove front tyres, which are new this year, had slowed things up in comparison with the 3-groove tyres last year. Lap 43, the last lap but one, looking like yet another McLaren 1-2, which we've become so used to over the years. The last one was at the last race in Hungary, and of course it's not by no means the first one that we've had this year. And there's the man, David Coulthard, lap 43, 1 to go.
F1 ITV statistician tells me that back in 97, Michael Schumacher left this venue with a 12-point lead in the World Championship and still ended up losing it to Jacques Villeneuve. So clearly with 40 points after this race, still 40 points to be won, then you know, it's nowhere near all over yet in terms of this year's World Championship, although the Constructors is beginning to edge very much in McLaren's favour.
And it was James Allen who not only keeps on top of things down in the pit lane, but keeps us up to date on the statistics. Thanks for that, James. Lap 43, here's Frentzen, and he's 22 seconds still behind Mika Hakkinen as he comes through to complete. He's going into Farn, now the right-hander, then the left-hander, then up to the second timing point. The right-hander at Stavelot dives inside, passes. Here's the second right-hander at Stavelot, where they rejoin, as I said earlier, on the old Belgian Grand Prix circuit, one of the greatest in the world. It had to be shortened to half its length because the weather was so unpredictable that you could literally get dry course at the beginning of the lap and an enormous rainstorm halfway through. And David Coulthard is now on his last lap as the Union Jacks, the Union flags fly. He's climbed up from Kemmel, slowed down from 200 miles an hour. This is the highest point of the course, and he's dropping down. And since he took the lead at the first corner last source, he has looked impregnable.
Yes, he put on that spurt in the first 10 laps of the race, pulled himself out, best part of 11 seconds lead, and he's been able to maintain it ever since. Hakkinen had a stab for 2 or 3 laps. Coulthard responded. Hakkinen seemed to give up at that point, or not give up, but realised he couldn't get that gap back. Then had that poor pit stop where he lost another 3 or 4 seconds, and that has made it very comfortable for this man, David Coulthard,
who is going to consolidate his 3rd place in the World Championship by breaking clear of Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who shares it with him at this moment for the last few hundred yards of the 1999 Belgian Grand Prix. 10 points for David Coulthard is going to put him on 46 points to the 60 that we're expecting Mika Hakkinen by finishing in 2nd place to have, as Coulthard rounds Blanchimont and up to the bus stop for the last time.
Yes, David won't agree with me, but a good old rainstorm in the middle of this race wouldn't have done any harm today. Actually, might have injected a touch more spice into it, but Coulthard didn't need any of that as he gently goes through the bus stop, and he doesn't need to catch any buses today because there's going to be quite a party. Coulthard gloriously wins the Belgian Grand Prix.
Over the line, slows down to the acclaim of the McLaren mechanics, and Mika Hakkinen finishes, so it's the maximum possible points for McLaren. 10 for Coulthard, 6 for Hakkinen. Here is the Jordan of Heinz-Harald Frentzen, finishing as high as he could realistically have expected to do against the McLarens. And Jordan will be very happy with his 3rd place and the 4 points that go with it. Eddie Irvine will be next in the Scarlet Ferrari. In 4th place, there he is, 3 points, and it's still mighty, mighty close at the front for the Drivers' Championship. The lead has changed. Mika Hakkinen now has the lead, but by a mere 1 point from Eddie Irvine. Everything is still to play for.
Yes, 1st and 2nd place man there. 44-lap race, Irvine finishes 45 seconds behind, so they... you know, that's easy to work out, isn't it? And I think Ferrari will be quite shocked at that deficit, although Monza is a completely different style of racetrack with an X-venue.
Well, you can be sure that Ferrari will be making a maximum effort for Ferrari, and you're going to be able to cut the atmosphere there with a cricket stump. Michael Schumacher will be back. It's Ferrari territory. It's the home of the Tifosi. Ron Dennis talks about his happiness at having 1st and 2nd place to James Allen. Mika Hakkinen not looking over pleased with his 2nd position, but it's a good job done. I always say to them, why don't you look happier? And they say, well, we're paid to win the race, and that's what we expect to do. Yes,
he'd be disappointed with 2nd place, I think, today, and some 10-odd seconds behind, even though Coulthard just cruised the last lap. So Ron Dennis there doing an interview with our own James Allen, I'm sure you'll see shortly, and Ron with a twinkle in his eye, and McLaren looking very calm about that solid, very dominant 1-2.
Yes, and the McLaren team with yet another victory under their belt, and a very well-deserved victory. Everybody at Woking who's watching this can be very, very proud of everything they've done.
There's a few people up in Twynham in Scotland, I think, will be equally as proud.
In the Star Hotel, which they traditionally gather in to cheer David Coulthard home. Sometimes he's come home in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th position. 6 times he's come home in 1st position, and this is that 6th time on what is regarded as a driver's circuit. David Coulthard then wins at Spa in Belgium, moves up to 3rd position, or rather stays in 3rd position on his own, as opposed to sharing it with Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Drivers' Championship. But although, as I said, it's very close at the top between Hakkinen and Irvine with a new leader and a gap of only 1 point, Ferrari know that they are up against it, and they need everything that the master Michael Schumacher is hopefully going to be able to do for them at Monza, and subsequently, of course, at the European Grand Prix, the German Nürburgring, at Malaysia, a first-time Grand Prix, and then at what many people regard as the best circuit of all, Suzuka in Japan.
Yes, there's Coulthard en route. Not expecting any dramas in this replay, just I think to show how solid the car was. And hats off to McLaren really, because it's rather stylish and I think shows a lot of confidence not to start messing around with positions, even though Ferrari is so close to them in the World Championship. And Coulthard on the top step of the podium, as you say, Murray, for the 6th time in his career, 2nd time this year.
Yeah, no Schumacher leaps, no Damon Hill leaps for David Coulthard, but the national anthem. Second place, Mika Häkkinen, looking a bit like second place Ralf Schumacher last year, looking as though you'd given him a £5 note and taken a tenner back. He's obviously not overjoyed with his second place. But McLaren have now taken the lead from Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship by 9 points, on 106 to Ferrari's 97. Jordan, as Martin rightly said, have consolidated, indeed extended their third place gap between themselves and Williams, and are looking very good indeed for their highest ever finish in the Constructors' Championship. In the black hat, the man in the black hat, and it's probably not the right colour for him, Adrian Newey, the man who's primarily responsible with his team at Woking for the brilliance of the 1999 McLaren with its Mercedes-Benz engine, which has finished first and second here at Spa. And he was accepting the Constructors' Trophy here at Spa on behalf of the McLaren team, something that's normally done by Ron Dennis.
Presumably there's only one national anthem because it's a British driver and a British constructor.
A very happy David Coulthard. He has every reason to be. He has shown very much that he's the class of the field today.
Mika Häkkinen conspicuous by his absence, I think, in the champagne bath there, but he's over-talking with, now I can see him far left, he's over-talking with Adrian.
As Heinz-Harald Frentzen liberally sprinkles the crowd below with champagne. And it's David Coulthard then in Belgium who's done it. And we've seen McLaren get right back on top, no doubt about it. Ferrari struggling, Jordan have done extremely well. Italy and Ferrari needs Michael Schumacher, and they're going to have him at Monza in 2 weeks' time as we go for a break.
Welcome and congratulations to the top 3 drivers at the 1999 Belgian Grand Prix. David Coulthard, Mika Häkkinen and Heinz-Harald Frentzen. David, great victory, crushing victory, but a very aggressive start. Talk us through that first corner.
Well, before the actual red lights went out, Mika moved, and I almost moved with him as a reaction. And then when the lights went out properly, he made a not very good start. I made a better start, and naturally came over to defend what I could take on the line. And when I realised it was still going to be close, I opened out a little bit, and then there was a little bit of contact, but I don't think there was any damage done.
So you actually touched then?
Yeah, that we touched just as we were turning into the source, but then I turned away to make room so there would be no damage done.
Now, you were much faster than Mika in the first stint, and the rest of the race was really even. Was it just because you were pushing early on?
I don't know. I was surprised I was pulling away from Mika. I don't know if he had some damage to his car from the contact, or whether he had some other problem. But pretty much it was easy to pull away, and then just try and maintain the gap until my last stop.
Now, when you won in Silverstone, you did mention the fact that the 2 contenders went out of that race due to accidents and problems. Does it give you more satisfaction to win here at the driver's circuit?
Absolutely. It's always been my favourite track, and I've never won here in any of the formulas I've raced. So to finally win here is great. So to win Silverstone this year and then Spa, it's 2 big circuits for me.
Dave, thanks very much. Mika, we've heard David's version of those first few yards. How did you see the first corner?
I knew you were going to ask that first, but I understand it is a start, obviously. Yeah. So it was experience again. Not very pleasant, but no further comments, to be honest. But in general, I think the race itself, how it went, when you have 2 very competitive cars, equal speed, overtaking, then is something which is not something what I should consider in that point. So and try to stay close to David doesn't make any sense either, because engine doesn't cool very well that moment. You take unnecessary risks because you don't have the best possible downforce in the car. So that moment is better just to drop and concentrate for your race and able to score in the best what you can have. And what the moment was the best possible to score is the 2nd position, which is obviously in the championship. It's better than nothing what could happen in the first corner. But like I said, I think at the moment we're equal points with Eddie. I understood he was fourth. So that makes it situation interesting further on in the season.
Just going back a bit, what actually happened on the start line?
Yeah, I have a slight problem there, and when the lights went on and all the lights were burning, you want to feel the clutch where it is, and suddenly the clutch grabbed very quickly, and the car moved. Luckily, I stopped the car completely that moment and put the clutch back in completely. And obviously that's normal. What happens is the light goes off that moment. I still was able to make a reasonable start, to be honest, and I was hanging there all the time, but that's it.
Thanks, Mika. Heinz-Harald, you made a good start, kept your 3rd position, then the 2 McLarens went away from you, the rest of the field came behind you. It seemed like a very, very quiet race. Was that how you saw it?
Yes, indeed. I mean, I felt a little bit sorry for the spectators. At least in the front, we couldn't have an interesting fight. Actually, at the start, I was quite confident that Mika would get a penalty, but I think unfortunately he didn't for me. But I think the system is activated in a certain moment. So, but I was quite happy to get away as well, because there was a little bit of confusion, and then I tried to do my own race, tried to be as quick as possible, and try to maintain my rhythm. I tried to follow Mika as much as possible, but unfortunately McLaren, they were a bit too fast for us today.
Heinz-Harald, thank you. David, you're now just 14 points behind Mika, 13 behind Eddie. You must be now thinking about the World Championship.
Not really, no. Thinking about the next race, because it's obviously those races that put you in contention for that. So just go away, hopefully have a good test in Monza, and look forward to that race.
Well, the next race obviously has the spectre for McLaren of Michael Schumacher's return. Is that going to affect how you prepare for the race?
Not at all. We prepare to our best of our ability for every Grand Prix. Obviously, you can expect some more competition when Michael's back, but we can't do any more than we're already doing.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Well done. And now from Mika and Heinz Harald, a word in your own language, please. Mika.
Olipa aika jännä kisa. Jännä kisa, tommonen 500 metriä. Ja ei se lopputulos päätynyt niin kuin tietysti mikä oli kuviteltu ja mitä oli ajateltu ja mitä oli suunniteltu. Ja se oli todella pettymys, mitä siinä startissa tapahtui ja siinä oikeasti siinä ekassa mutkassa, että meidän jäädä koko leikki periaatteessa siinä kesken. Jotenka siinä mielessä niin se oli aika sääli se koko kilpailu, että mä en enempää pystynyt täältä saamaan niitä pisteitä. Okei, kisoja on vielä jäljellä aika monta, eli katsotaan mitä tapahtuu. Kiitos.
Thank you, Mika. Heinz Harald?
Ja, dritter Platz heute. Ich freue mich riesig für die Punkte, für den Podiumplatz. Und Damon hat heute auch einen Punkt geholt, also noch ein weiterer Schritt zu unserem Ziel, Dritter in der Konstruktionsweltmeisterschaft zu werden. Dritter Platz, wir können damit zufrieden sein. Heute war nicht mehr drin, leider Gottes. McLaren sind zu stark gewesen, aber wir sind zufrieden.
Thank you, gentlemen, and congratulations.